Global Investment Immigration Summit was held at the Sofitel BKC, Mumbai, which was organized by BLS Global with Acquest Advisors as the knowledge partner. The event brought together immigration experts from around the world, including the US, UK, Spain, Portugal, Greece, and more. Well, are you thinking of migrating overseas? Do you have any questions regarding the EB-5 visa? What is the processing time? How much investment is needed? Well, we all have many questions regarding this, and you can get all your questions answered here as we have experts. Thank you all so much for joining us. Before we begin, let me introduce the panel. We have with us Musa Najai, Director of Investor Relations, CMB Regional Center. This is one of the oldest regional centers with over 25 years of active operation. We have Mr. Akshat Gupta, Director of Business Development, US Immigration Fund. Again, among one of the largest regional centers, having served over 5,000 EB-5 investors and their families. Bart Sohomsi, Investor Relations Asia EB-5 United. It's a global financial services firm providing both EB-5 and private equity investment opportunities. Mr. Ishan Khanna, Director Business Development EB-5 Capital, one of the leading regional centers with a successful track record serving investors from over 70 countries. Mark I. Davies, he's the Global Chairman, Davies & Associates. It's a renowned EB-5 attorney with immense experience of dealing with Indian clients. And Mr. Paresh Karia, CEO, Acquest Advisors, an immigration advisory firm specializing in investment and business-based immigration. Thank you all so much for joining us here on NDTV. We are at Sofitel BKC, Mumbai at the Global Investment and Immigration Summit. Thanks so much for joining us. Ishan, I would like to begin with you. For our viewers, if you can tell us the basics. Let's start with that. What is the EB-5 visa and what are its benefits?
Sure. So basically, EB-5 is an immigration by investment program. You get an immigration benefit, which is the green card, for an investment that you make in the country. The trade-off and how it's worked, and it's worked for many years, is that you as a foreign national can make an investment which will essentially allow for jobs to be created in the US. That exchange essentially allows you to then immigrate and live in the United States with your family. It's been around for a long time. The program was started back in the 90s. I actually did EB-5 myself back in 2016. I think I saw the benefit of living in the US and building my career there, and thanks to the support of my family, I did EB-5 myself, and yeah.
Okay, so thanks for explaining that, but why would I invest $800,000 for an EB-5 visa to get a green card when there are other options available to get green cards as well?
So I'm totally not being biased here when I say America is the greatest country on earth. It's great, yes, but it depends on you and I think individual immigrants and what they want. For me, I wanted to build my life there. I wanted to build a career there. I wanted access to opportunities that I didn't have in India. So for me, it made sense. Now, here's the truth. Do I think I will actually live in that country forever? I don't know. A part of me doesn't really want to retire there. I want to come back. I want to buy myself a nice little home in Dehradun and live there and grow old. But as I want to build my career and life there, for me, it made a lot of sense.
Okay.
That is why, for me, the US makes sense. That's why EB-5 makes sense. I mean, there's plenty of other opportunities where I could have chosen Europe, I could have chosen Greece or Portugal, and they have immigration by investment programs too, oftentimes at half the same investment amount. But for me, the US made a lot of sense, as it would for a lot of other people, which is the opportunities that that country provides is unique, and that is why I would do it, even at an incredibly low yield as well.
Okay, so the opportunities is what you say. Mark, if I can come to you here talking about the processing timelines. Sure. How long does it take for someone to get a green card through the EB-5 process?
Well, the first step in the green card process is filing Form I-526. We had a new law last year that enables you to get what I call a synthetic green card, which means if you're in the United States, you can simultaneously apply to adjust from another status. This can result in you getting a work permit and a travel permit. That's what I call a synthetic green card. It's not a green card. So that new sort of category of green card can come very quickly, and it's been speeding up. So as fast as about 3 months to get one of those synthetic green cards. When the I-526 is approved, you're then sort of in line for the conditional green card. I-526 processing times that our clients saw in India were about 2 to 3 years. Again, we saw sort of some changes in the law. We saw some new categories. There's also such thing as expedited projects, which means that, right now I'm sort of quite optimistic about I-526 processing times, and that would be towards the conditional green card.
Moving on, Bart, is there any way of fast-tracking the process? Sometimes people are waiting for years, like Mark just told us. So how do we, we hear people have been waiting for their green card and the visa. So is there a way that we can fast-track this procedure?
Sure. So as Mark mentioned, essentially since last year, there's a new EB-5 program with new rules, new visa categories, new visa set-asides. And one of those categories is a project investment in a rural area. Rural area defined as a county or area under population of 20,000 people. So investors, clients who invest in that type of projects in those locations qualify for what's called priority processing. And recently we've seen in our projects, in our rural projects, investors received approvals as fast as seven months. We had multiple I-526E approvals between 7 to 10 months, which is much, much faster than it was previously, when sometimes client waited, 2 years or so on, or even longer. So the new EB-5 program is more expensive, but it's much more upgraded, much faster with rural set-asides visa categories.
Okay, so it's expensive, you can put in more money, but it's definitely faster. So, Paresh, if I can come to you here, we see a lot of Indians now turning towards the EB-5 visa. Why is that? So why do we see this change happening at the shift?
Well, that's very easy to answer. You know that, US has been very popular destination among Indians, and we have a live example over here in Ishan. So like Ishan, there are many other, Indians who are dreaming of moving to US, and they've been chasing this American dream, and that's the reason why they are going over there. What was happening was, earlier, people would go for education over there. They would, go on a study visa, then they would take up an H-1B visa, and from H-1B visa, they would migrate to green card. Now that process is very long, like Mark knows about that and other panelists over here. It takes years and years to follow this process. So if you want to fast track the process of getting a green card, if you want to secure your children's future, we all know what is happening right now in the US. People are losing their jobs. It is difficult to get jobs. So after you complete your education in the US, there is no certainty you will get an H-1B visa and you will continue to stay there. So most of the wealthy Indians who have already sent their children overseas or are planning to send their children overseas are looking at EB-5 to secure the future of their children in the US. That is one of the primary reasons right now for Indians going for green card.
So that's the reason you see a lot of people are moving towards EB-5. Musa, one of the main objectives as well as requirements for the EB-5 visa is the creation of jobs.
Indeed.
For the Americans. Could you explain the role of regional centers in this? Can you just tell our audience about that?
So the regional center is an entity that actually has been approved by the federal government to pull funds from investors and use it in a bigger scale. So folks can do a direct investment or can do a regional center investment, but I would say 95% of the EB-5 investors go through a regional center investment. Once you have the funds, you can use it on a bigger scale project instead of just one individual making one investment and creating 10 jobs. A regional center can create a multitude of jobs and allow all those investors to benefit from it at the same time. So that's one of the advantages of it. And we don't need to create direct employment, though we need some direct employment, but we also have the benefit of using indirect jobs, which is based on capital expenditure. The more money that is being spent in an area in the US, more jobs that are being created.
So that's a very important aspect.
It is.
Just moving on to the finance part, and before I come to you, Akshat, I want to ask you, Mark, another important requirement for the EB-5 is the source of the fund. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Sure. Well, when you file a case, the United States government wants to know where you got your money from. It's as simple as that. In addition to that, they want to know how it was remitted to the United States. So I would say that if your source of funds is done properly, the chances of you having any problem with it is very, very low. On the source of funds, it really just is a case you've got to show where the money came from. The one top thing I would mention is if you have a business, when you do EB-5, and you're sourcing money from your business, that's completely fine, but you also need to show the government how you invested in the business in the first place, right? Prove that you actually own some of the business, and that's just one of the little things that comes up in India.
Sure, that's really valid. You need to know where the funds are coming from and do it the right way. I think that's the very important point. What are the different types of projects which are involved when it comes to EB-5?
Sure, you can see a variety of projects available for EB-5. However, there's certain assets class that really are the most common and popular. So that would be residential real estate development, commercial development, or a little bit more exotic, I'd say, infrastructure or manufacturing projects. So these are the really three types of different asset classes. Each of them have different characteristics, different risk level based on location, based on market conditions, economical environment, interest rates, and so on. So they have different kind of flavor to each of them, essentially.
Okay. Akshat, what are the various ways in which the EB-5 funds can be used in financing the projects? I think that is something which everybody would want to know.
Right. So there are essentially two types of investments that we recommend investors to watch out for. Essentially, it could be a preferred equity investment or a mezzanine loan investment. Now, what these two investments do is that it puts you ahead of the developer in the capital stack, right? So there's some sort of security. So for example, in any EB-5 project, if an investor is invested about 10, 15, 20 million, whatever the investment is, as long as you're ahead of the capital stack, in the capital stack ahead of the developer, you know that the developer cannot take out even a single dollar from the project unless they pay off the senior lender and all EB-5 investors. So the beauty about the EB-5 visa program is that A, you're in control of which car you're getting into, and B, it's just directly proportional to the investment that you make. So you are in absolute control of what you're getting into.
Okay, so since you said it's directly proportionate of what you're putting in, Ishan, if I can come to you for this tough one, what is the investment, when somebody invests, and obviously you want to know the ROI. How much time is that? What are the timelines on that?
Okay, so let's be transparent here. The ROI in terms of monetary value when it comes to EB-5 is next to nothing for most investment offerings.
Sure.
The main ROI for anyone who wants to do EB-5 is the green card itself. And I can tell you all transparently, the investment project that I invested in pays me a 0.25% return a year. I'm basically losing money doing EB-5. So why on earth would someone do it? Is again, what I talked about earlier, it has to be truly worth it for you to want to live and permanently reside in the US. Now, how does one get their money back after they made the investment? So what happens is when you actually invest your money in EB-5 in a project, your money is spent in the project and your balance goes to zero. From then on out, the asset itself needs to be able to be profitable, needs to make money, so then it can then provide the money back to you at the end of your investment term. So going off what Akshat said earlier, which was where you are in the capital stack, depending on where you stand in the capital stack, whether it's a senior debt position, mezz debt, preferred equity, or pari passu equity, you would get your money back according to the terms and conditions that you've signed in the project.
Okay.
So this is where, when you look at investment return and how you get the money back and the risk and reward, this is where you need to sit down with folks like us, look at the investment options that are out there, and then make your decision. Read through the documents and understand exactly how the project is going to work, and then repay you back at the end of it.
It's important to know where you're putting in your money and how you get your investment back.
Absolutely.
Paresh, what are the factors that should be considered while selecting an EB-5 visa? We've spoken about the different projects, but what are the factors you suggest?
The way the regional center structure works is that it is a collective, it's a vehicle which collects money from the EB-5 investors and deploys this money into various, projects. So if we talk about in Indian terms, we are talking about it being similar to a mutual fund. A mutual fund is licensed by SEBI. It collects the money and it invests money on behalf of the investors in different kind of instruments. Similarly, a regional center is licensed by US GIIS, the US government, and it collects money from various investors, pulls this investment together and deploys this money in a particular project, in a single project. Now this money can be deployed either by way of equity or by way of loan or by way of preferred equity. So we have to look at it from that point of view. What is the investment structure? Of course, if it's equity, you would get higher return, but you carry higher risk. If it is debt, in that case, you will not get very high return. Like Ishan said, he just got 2.25% return. But at least your money will be relatively safer. It's a loan which is paid, which is going to be repaid by the regional, by the project to the regional center. So we also have to look at underlying terms, just like any other loan. This is a loan and we have to look at the terms of the loan. There is an underlying agreement. The agreement specifies all the terms and conditions of the loan. What is the underlying security? What is the tenure of the loan? How the loan is going to be repaid? What are the recourse available in case, of default, etc. So that is another factor you have to look at. And of course, you have to look at the business plans, etc. That is something which, an experienced advisor can go into the technicalities and look at it. But these are the two important factors I would say one has to look at.
Mark, would you like to add to anything what Paresh has said?
So, first of all, you need an immigration lawyer, right? EB-5 became more, I think, safer for investors last year, but also became a little bit more intricate. So I think you need to have an immigration lawyer look at the project to make sure that you're going to comply with, for immigration perspective. When you're looking at a project, I think you also need to look at the way that the project is structured in terms of making sure that, I always think of it like one of these bottles of water, right? The water inside it is the money in the project. And so you need to make sure that the money's there. That's a financial issue. But the structure within which the water is held is a legal issue, right? The law creates a vessel for holding your funds in the project. And my recommendation would be you talk to a lawyer who understands something about real estate finance. And if you did that, I think you miss virtually every significant project failure there's been in the history of EB-5.
I think that's a really interesting way to explain it. Thanks for that. Musa, coming to you, what role does the US government play in monitoring the investments as well as protecting all the investors?
So you have several government agencies that are actually involved in the EB-5. You have the US GIIS, which is the US Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is in charge of overseeing all petitions. So when an individual prepares a petition, it comes from the source of funds and the projects of their choice, that's the I-526E petition, it goes to the US GIIS for them to review everything. But also you have the SEC, which is reviewing the regional centers. So since I would say recently, all regional centers have to be in compliance with SEC. So the SEC, all investment in EB-5 are considered securities. So if you were in the US, you have to go through certain requirements before you can make an investment. If you're overseas, you're supposed to be protected by your country of origin. But the US is not just letting all these companies do whatever they want with this program, because you're using somebody's funds at no guarantees.
Okay.
That's one thing that we have to put clear. There is no guarantee if you make an EB-5 investment. There is an at-risk requirement, but it doesn't mean that the investment you're making is risky. So all regional centers in here, we do our best to mitigate the risk as much as possible. But we also have the requirements of the US government that we have to follow through.
Perfect. I think that's really well answered. I hope that everybody has got that. Akshay, the last one for you. How will the increase in the TCS affect the EB-5 from India? And do you think Indians are running now, or they're moving faster so that they can save that extra before the increase actually comes in? Do you see that shift?
Sure. So we discussed this in April as well. The government of India initially planned to levy a 20% TCS effective from the 1st of July. And then on the 1st of July, they gave an extension saying that we're extending this to the 1st of October. So typically, if you see this is an extension deadline, it would be difficult to comment if the government of India might give another extension. Okay. We've been traveling extensively since the last 1 month, meeting a lot of investors. Someone who's absolutely serious about EB-5 is evaluating this process, definitely is taking this deadline very seriously. While of course there are a set of investors that feel that, so since this is not TDS, this is TCS, tax collected at source. So you can technically claim this tax later in the next year while you file your income tax returns. But it typically depends on the availability of funds. There are certain investors for whom 20% TCS is not an issue. But for those who think that this is obviously a significant amount while they're trying to source $800,000, which is again not a small amount for any standards, right? It is definitely something that people are taking up seriously and considering for sure.
Okay, thanks for that. I think that's a lot of information we've got, whether it's understanding the processing time, the investment needed, the funds, the selection of projects. Thank you all so much, Bart, Musa, Mark, Ishan, Akshat and Paresh for joining us. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.